April 2nd, 2026. A federal courthouse in New York City. A judge releases a 152-page ruling that all of Hollywood had been waiting on for months. And when it landed, 10 of Blake Lively's 13 claims against Justin Baldoni were gone. Her sexual harassment allegations? Dismissed. Her defamation claims? Dismissed. Her conspiracy claims? Dismissed. And Justin Baldoni himself, the man she accused of orchestrating a campaign to destroy her reputation, removed from her lawsuit entirely. The woman who had just starred in a $351 million movie had just lost most of her case against the director of that exact same movie. She posted on Instagram the next morning with a dragon emoji.
Now here is the question this entire video is going to work toward. And I promise you, the answer is not what the headlines are giving you. Did the lawsuit ruin Blake Lively's career? Or was her career already being dismantled before she filed a single document by people she had trusted, using tools most of us didn't even know existed? Because here is something almost nobody is talking about. Blake Lively didn't just file one lawsuit, she quietly filed a secret one first, months earlier, then withdrew it 2 days before the story went public. And that detail alone tells you everything about how this story actually operates. Stay with me. This goes deeper than any headline you've read. Before we go any further, if you want to be here when this trial kicks off on May 18th, hit subscribe right now. We will cover every development. It costs you nothing, and every subscriber tells YouTube this channel covers this story better than anyone else. Now, let's talk about what actually happened.
To understand April 2026, you have to go back to July 2019. That is when Justin Baldoni announced on Instagram that his production company, Wayfarer Studios, had acquired the rights to adapt Colleen Hoover's novel, It Ends With Us. If you know that book, you know what it is. A story about a woman who falls in love with a man who turns out to be abusive. A domestic violence narrative that had become one of the most read, most discussed books on Book Talk and Book Instagram of its generation. Turning it into a movie felt like a cultural event, and in January 2023, the casting made that feeling concrete. Blake Lively as Lily Bloom, Baldoni as Ryle Kincaid, the abuser. Filming started in Hoboken, New Jersey in May 2023, and right there is a detail that sounds completely irrelevant that will return as one of the most consequential facts in a $161 million lawsuit. Almost all of the production happened in New Jersey, not California, New Jersey. The 2023 WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes halted production midway through, and cameras only rolled again in January 2024 in Jersey City. Budget, $25 million. Distributor, Sony Pictures. Release date, August 9th, 2024.
And here's what nobody saw coming. The first trailer generated 319 million total views, outpacing the first trailers for Wicked, Barbie, and the Taylor Swift Eras Tour film. Taylor Swift's song My Tears Ricochet was in that trailer, secured personally by Blake Lively from her best friend. Analysts said that song alone was a key factor in separating the film from everything else in theaters that summer. Opening weekend, $50 million domestically, finishing second only behind Deadpool and Wolverine, which starred Blake Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds. The last time a married Hollywood couple held the #1 and #2 spots at the box office simultaneously was 1990. The final worldwide gross, $351 million. The net profit, calculated by Deadline Hollywood, $207 million on a $25 million budget. A $25 million film making $207 million in profit. Blake Lively was, by every number Hollywood uses to measure a career, at the top of hers. And underneath all of it, something was already collapsing.
Here is the first impossible moment of this story. The press tour for a $351 million movie did more damage to Blake Lively's public image than the film itself did good. Let that math sit for a second. Audiences noticed immediately that Lively and Baldoni weren't appearing together at press events. Neither addressed why. What Lively addressed enthusiastically was everything else: the florals, the friendship, the celebration. She encouraged audiences to wear florals to a film about a woman being beaten by the man she loves. She appeared at events with Ryan Reynolds, pulling the spotlight toward their celebrity relationship and away from the film's domestic violence themes. And then the brand tie-ins arrived. Betty Buzz and Betty Booze, her beverage companies, had a pop-up store in New York directly tied to the film's promotional campaign. Alcohol at an event connected to a domestic violence story in a country where the documented links between alcohol abuse and domestic violence are well established. The internet did not let that go, and it did not quiet down.
Now here is where the story forces you to hold two things at the same time. Behind the scenes, Lively was not just the face on a poster. Reporting from Deadline described her as a creative tour de force on this film, rewriting scenes, reworking the edit, redesigning the entire marketing strategy, and personally recutting the trailer after she wasn't satisfied with the first version. The 84% female audience, the 60% same-day ticket buying, the 319 million trailer views, none of that was accidental. She built that. And none of it reached the public conversation. What reached the public was the alcohol pop-up. What reached the public was the wear florals energy around a movie about abuse. What reached the public was the growing, spreading online consensus that Blake Lively didn't take her own film seriously enough, and that she was somehow the villain of a story she had spent a year helping to build. But here is what the public didn't know yet. While all of that was happening, Blake Lively had already started quietly building a legal case, because something had happened on that set, and she had not forgotten it.
Real quick, if this breakdown is actually giving you the full picture instead of the 3-sentence version you've been seeing everywhere, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it is literally how YouTube decides whether to show this to the people who need to see it. Okay, back to it. Here is the part of this story that most coverage has either buried or skipped entirely, and it changes how you read everything else. In September 2024, while It Ends With Us was still playing in theaters and the discourse was still mostly about the press tour, Blake Lively filed a lawsuit. Not the one you've heard about, a different one, a covert one, filed quietly, specifically to gain subpoena power, the legal ability to compel people to hand over documents and private communications without those people being able to fight it publicly. Baldoni's team would later call it designed to obtain subpoena power without oversight or scrutiny and a flagrant abuse of process. Lively's team called it a necessary and legal step to gather evidence. Then, on December 19, 2024, she withdrew it. 2 days later, on December 21st, the New York Times published a detailed expose on her allegations. The same day, WME, William Morris Endeavor, one of the most powerful talent agencies in the entertainment industry, which represented both Lively and Baldoni, dropped Baldoni as a client. The timing was not a coincidence. The covert lawsuit had done its job, the evidence was gathered, and the public filing was coming. On December 20, 2024, Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. On December 31st, she filed the federal lawsuit in the Southern District of New York. The details were explosive. Her legal team stated that Baldoni kissed, nuzzled, and touched her without consent, made unwelcome comments about her appearance and her weight, and was consistently inappropriate throughout the production. Baldoni denied every allegation. His legal team would later argue that some of the behavior Lively described occurred within the creative context of acting in scenes together, and the judge's eventual ruling actually addressed that exact argument, writing that creative artists must have some amount of space to experiment within the bounds of an agreed script without fear of being held liable for harassment. But the harassment claims were only the surface layer. Underneath them was the allegation that gave this case its real shape.
Lively alleged that after she raised concerns about Baldoni's behavior, he and his team launched a coordinated professional campaign to destroy her reputation before she could ever tell her side publicly. In her legal filing, she described it as a multi-tiered plan, with the Baldoni Wayfarer team creating, planting, amplifying, and boosting content specifically designed to, in her words, eviscerate Ms. Lively's credibility. A digital army, that is what she called it.
Her attorneys calculated that this campaign generated more than 65 million negative social media impressions, causing at least 34 million in direct reputational damage. By July 2025, the total claimed damages figure had risen to $161 million, with her team indicating an intent to pursue triple that in punitive damages. Now stop and think about what she is actually alleging. Not just that she was harassed on a film set, but that the online backlash, the press tour pile-ons, the memes, the viral criticism, the tone-deaf Blake narrative was at least partly manufactured, engineered, built and distributed by a professional PR operation that knew exactly what it was doing and when to deploy it. The court of public opinion turned against Blake Lively. Her lawsuit alleges that was the point. There is a psychological concept called DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Baldoni's team used that exact term in their defense, arguing they were the ones being victimized through a calculated public smear. The word got thrown around by both sides. The lawyers argued over who was doing it to whom, and none of that confusion was an accident either.
January 2025. Baldoni's response lands, and it is not quiet. A $400 million defamation lawsuit against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds personally. $400 million. His team alleged that Lively and Reynolds had hijacked his film, organized a campaign to destroy his career, and used their industry connections to isolate and humiliate him. His attorney's position in court filings was stated plainly. This is a dispute about Hollywood reputations, not genuine legal wrongs. They argued Lively's own ill-advised public statements and actions caused whatever damage her reputation had suffered, that Justin did nothing to her that she hadn't first done to him. His attorney, Brian Friedman, became a constant public presence throughout early 2025, releasing statements and giving interviews in a way that Lively's team argued was itself an extension of the same retaliation she'd originally complained about. Lively requested a gag order in January 2025. The judge denied it. In February 2025, Baldoni launched a website called The Lawsuit Info, presenting his own timeline and his own documents for public consumption. His team released set footage of a dance scene they claimed directly contradicted one of her major allegations. And then the text messages arrived.
Private communications between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift became part of the public record through the court proceedings. Lively had messaged Swift, calling Baldoni a clown and a doofus director. Swift, writing to Lively in the fall of 2024, had referred to Baldoni in dismissive terms, and the fact that these communications existed, that they were real, that Swift's lawyers were actively trying to keep her out of the case entirely, turned the volume on this entire story past any level it had previously reached. Taylor Swift was on the potential witness list for the trial, along with Emily Blunt, Hugh Jackman, Scooter Braun, Gigi Hadid, and Sony Pictures' own chairman. Think about what it means that a Hollywood studio chairman is potentially being called to testify in a dispute that started on a $25 million movie set. A court-ordered settlement conference in February 2025 produced nothing. Both sides left without a deal. The trial date was locked in for May 18, 2026, and neither party showed any sign of backing down.
Okay, pause. We are genuinely halfway through one of the most complicated celebrity legal stories in years. And if you have made it this far without subscribing yet, what is actually going on with you? The subscribe button is right there. It is free. It does not require a credit card, a court filing, or a $400 million countersuit. Just a click. Do it. And now let's get to the part where everything flips. April 2nd, 2026.
Judge Louis Lyman releases a 152-page order. 10 of 13 claims dismissed. No harassment, no defamation, no conspiracy. Justin Baldoni removed from the lawsuit completely, along with every other individual defendant. And here is where geography becomes one of the most unexpected legal weapons in this entire story. Remember New Jersey? Remember that detail from May 2023 that seemed like a production footnote? Here it is, because almost all the filming happened in New Jersey and not California, the alleged conduct lacked what the judge called substantial connection to California, meaning it couldn't be pursued under California's Fair Employment and Housing Act. And because Lively held the legal classification of independent contractor on the production rather than employee, she had no access to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the federal law that prohibits sexual harassment in the workplace. Title VII only covers employees. Blake Lively spent over a year building a sexual harassment lawsuit. A combination of geography and her own contractual status dismantled it.
And here is the asymmetry that should genuinely stop you for a moment. The same woman who reworked the film's editing, redesigned its marketing campaign, secured Taylor Swift's song for the trailer, and is credited internally as a creative tour de force on this production, was legally classified as an independent contractor with no employment protections. She was powerful enough to reshape the film. She was not powerful enough, legally, to sue for what she says happened on its set. Baldoni's attorneys released a statement saying they were very pleased the court dismissed all harassment claims and all claims against every individual defendant. These were very serious allegations, they wrote, and we are grateful to the court for its careful review. But here is a detail Baldoni's team would probably prefer you not focus on. Just a few days before this ruling, at the end of March 2026, that same judge had formally reprimanded Baldoni's legal team for filing claims the court described as legally frivolous and factually baseless, specifically the civil extortion and business interference accusations against Lively and Reynolds. The judge found those claims had no real legal grounding. Baldoni's attorneys were formally reprimanded. No major penalty, but a formal reprimand from a federal judge is not nothing. Friedman's team took the April dismissal as a win and moved on. Lively's attorney, Mike Gottlieb, made sure reporters knew about the March reprimand when Friedman started celebrating.
Lively's team pushed back on the April ruling the moment it landed. Gottlieb's statement, the court had confirmed Lively provided evidence to go to trial on her core claims, that she raised concerns, those concerns were reasonable, and the defendants had crossed the line and took steps that harmed her reputation and career. The dismissed claims went down on legal technicalities, his statement said, rather than an endorsement of the defendant's conduct. WME, still representing Lively, released a statement as well. In an industry that too often asks women to absorb the damage and stay quiet, Blake Lively chose to stand up for herself, her castmates, and those without the ability to fight back. What goes to trial on May 18th is the retaliation case against Wayfarer Studios, the film's LLC, and the PR firm that worked for Baldoni's team. Breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting retaliation. Justin Baldoni is not a defendant in any of those remaining claims. Everyone thought this was going to be a harassment trial. What nobody expected was that it would become a trial about a PR firm and a production company, with the director himself already out of the case. Step away from the courtroom now, because the legal scoreboard only tells part of this story. And honestly, the business and reputation damage is where the question of whether her career is actually ruined becomes real and measurable. Blake Brown, her hair care brand launched in 2024, the one she promoted during the It Ends With Us press tour to considerable public criticism, reportedly fell apart commercially. According to reporting from Puck, sales allegedly dropped by as much as 78% following the December 2024 lawsuit filing. A brand once believed to carry a $100 million valuation was projected to generate under $15 million in total sales for 2025. A brand that was supposed to be worth $100 million made less than $15 million in a year.
That is not a dip. That is a collapse. Part of that decline, insiders suggested, came directly from the shift in Taylor Swift's fan base toward Lively, or rather, away from her. Swift's audience had been a real and measurable consumer force for Lively's products. Once the private texts became public, once the legal filings got complicated, once the dragon emoji story became a tabloid fixture, that fan base cooled, and tens of millions of dollars in projected brand revenue went with it.
Brand expert Kaylee Cornelius told Page Six after the April ruling, there is a real risk she could start to feel pushed out of the industry and struggle to secure major roles or brand deals going forward. The film industry is now incredibly fast-moving and competitive, and it often feels like a revolving door. As one star's momentum dips, there's now a whole new wave of new talent ready to take their place. Her conclusion, even legacy names such as Blake are no longer untouchable and guaranteed the security they once had. No longer untouchable. That phrase is doing a lot of work. Look at how she promoted Another Simple Favor, released on Amazon Prime in 2025. In 2018, the first A Simple Favor got the full press tour treatment, TV appearances, open interviews, media access. In 2025, there were no late-night shows, no open press junkets, and at the New York premiere, she posed for photos and said very little. At the SXSW premiere in March 2025, a Baldoni supporter stood outside the theater holding a sign reading "Justice for Justin Baldoni," wearing a shirt that read, "Blake lied."
That is not what a star at the height of their power looks like walking into a premiere. And then there was the donut shop incident. At some point in 2025, Lively visited a friend's shop in Connecticut, went behind the counter, and posted about it on Instagram. Commenters noticed she wasn't wearing a hairnet. The shop's Yelp page got spammed. A health department investigation was triggered. A hairnet. That is the level of scrutiny her name had attracted by 2025, where even a casual Instagram post behind a counter became a multi-day controversy. And yet, Time magazine put her on their 100 most influential people list in 2025. She has a trial where she intends to testify in her own words. She is, by her own statement, still fighting. The morning after losing most of her case, she posted with a dragon emoji. "I know it's a privilege to be able to stand. I will not waste it."
Before the conclusion, drop a comment right now. Team Blake, Team Baldoni, or just this entire situation is a lot. All three are valid. I genuinely want to know where you're landing after all of this, because the comment section on this video is going to be something. And yes, I read them. Here is what makes this story genuinely different from a typical celebrity scandal and why the court of public opinion has been so divided since August 2024. This story has two completely coherent readings, and the evidence supports both of them. In the first version, Blake Lively raised legitimate concerns about harassment and a hostile work environment, was met with a sophisticated professional retaliation campaign that manufactured online outrage and flooded the internet with negative content at scale, and is now going to trial to prove exactly that. The press tour pylons in this version weren't organic. They were seeded, amplified, and directed. The backlash wasn't the public's genuine reaction, it was a product. And the fact that she's now seen as the controversial one in this story is itself the most powerful evidence of how effective the campaign was. So, is Blake Lively done? Here is what the evidence actually shows, without spin in either direction. Her sexual harassment claims have been dismissed. Her beauty brand reportedly lost most of its commercial value in a single year. Industry experts are publicly saying she faces a harder road to major roles and brand deals than she has ever faced in her career. Her most famous friendship is now documented in federal court filings, and the trial starting May 18th doesn't even include Justin Baldoni as a defendant anymore, just his production company and a PR firm. And yet, she is still fighting. She posted a dragon emoji after losing most of her case. Her agency called her actions courageous, her attorney says the heart of the case survived, and a jury hasn't spoken yet. The $351 million movie, the $161 million lawsuit,
the $100 million brand that reportedly became a $15 million brand. The friendship with Taylor Swift, now complicated and legally documented. The $400 million countersuit that got dismissed. The trial that starts without the man she originally accused at its center. The version of Blake Lively that existed before August 2024, the one who seemed genuinely immune to Hollywood's gravity, the one with the box office hits, and the perfect image, and the business empire, and the friendship group. That version doesn't exist anymore. And it doesn't matter what the jury decides in May. That version is already gone. What comes after the trial is the only question left. Subscribe and set the notification bell, because when that verdict lands, we will be right here with the full story. Not the headline, the story. We will see you there.